Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to my first ever event on LinkedIn. I'm also on YouTube at Package My Potential, in my Facebook group, the Careers Community. And I think that's it, three. Um, Go easy on me because this is the first time that I'm ever using this kind of streaming software. So I'm really hoping that this works and that you can hear me. I don't think I think I won't see comments apparently. So I've got my laptop on at the same time so that I can see that I'm on. I'm just checking that I'm on. Um, So yeah, this is really exciting. So I am doing this event and it's called How to Powerfully Prepare for the Big Interview. Now, I chose this topic because it's something, the techniques and the tips that I'm going to share are the exact same tips and techniques that I use for myself. And I feel like they're quite successful, particularly in the situations that I put myself in, which I will share with you. But I do less interviews and more pitches, so I kind of treat the equivalent of the big interview for me is like the big pitch, where I'm having to go in front of a decision maker and sell myself, explain myself, really bring myself to life in the hope that they'll see my qualities and my attributes and give me the position that I want, which is usually to do with some type of media opportunity, whether that be on the radio or TV or something. And then obviously I work with my clients who are applying for their dream job positions, literally the roles that they have wanted for ages, and they might have been applying for those roles, not getting shortlisted, or they may have been interviewing for those roles but not getting that final job offer. So that's when I come in and do the things that I'm going to share, which leads to success. It leads to job offers. So I have the confidence that what I'm about to share with you is helpful and does actually work. Now, if anybody is watching me right now, would you do me a favor and please just tell me that you can hear me or give me a comment or something, because I can't really see anything. And apparently I will receive comments through this StreamYard thing that I'm using, because this is the first time that I'm using StreamYard. So if you can give a comment, then please do, just to let me know that you can hear me even. I'm just getting up. I'm just going to get myself up on the laptop before I start, just so I know that this is actually working. So let me see. Oh, I can see myself. John! Yes! Oh, I'm so happy. It's lovely to see you. I'm really sorry that I changed the time. I don't know if you noticed that this was going to happen at like 12 or something, 12:30. But yeah, this is my first time doing a stream, and I'm on YouTube and Facebook, I think, as well. But anyway, this is all about how to powerfully prepare for the big interview. And the reason why I'm doing this is because the hints and tips that I see out there, they actually make me quite angry, because I don't think they go deep enough. I don't think that they really give people enough to really feel confident to showcase themselves when it comes to the big interview. Hi, John. Hello. Thanks for joining me. And what I've got here, I'm gonna have to follow my notes because I can literally talk careers, interviews, job applications all day, every day. The time change worked really well for you. Yes. So I'm gonna have my notes. I've got to have them because, as I say, I'm so passionate about interviewing and careers and anything that's applications, CVs. I really need to keep to the time as well. So I've got my notes, but the things I'm gonna share, the 4 things that I'm gonna cover. We're gonna cover the worst ways to prepare for an interview. I'm going to share with you the best ways to prepare for the big interview, which is going to involve how to know your worth and trust yourself, how to think like an employer and kind of wear that detective hat. And within that is like the strategy of how to be 2-3 steps ahead of your decision makers. How to actually prepare in practice, which does not involve just simply going to a company website and checking that your tech's working and the other kind of basic tips that I read about, which really get my blood boiling. I'll actually explain to you how to do this really powerfully and successfully. And finally, the tools that you will need that will elevate and enhance and basically help prepare you for that big interview. So I've got it all planned out. There's a method to my madness, just bear with. So I'm going to start with the worst ways to prepare for a big interview. And I'm going to start by looking at the company website. Now, that makes sense. You've been shortlisted for interview. You probably would have done your research before you applied anyway, because obviously it helps your application to have done a bit of research. But to simply just look on the website and then regurgitate and learn maybe their strategy or what they've got on there simply is not enough. So I'm going to explain a bit later what bits of that website, what bits of research is going to really elevate that big interview and that preparation. But just having a look at the website is not a way of preparing really powerfully. Another thing that's like the worst thing that I see people do, and that is to rehearse, script potential answers to potential questions and then rehearse them all and spend all that time leading up to the interview worrying about what types of questions they may ask and then actually learning the response. Now, there's something about preparing in a way where you're anticipating different types of questions. We will need to do that. But the problem is when people have kind of they've focused too heavily on these potential questions and these potential answers. And the thing is, you can't really predict what kinds of format and order questions are going to be asked. So if you've then rehearsed them in a certain way and then they ask them in a slightly different way, you're going to become unstuck. And there's a much simpler, easier way of anticipating different types of interview questions, which I'm going to share. So to recap, the worst ways of preparing for an interview would be to kind of skim over their company website, learn a few bits and bobs from it, and then script out a load of potential questions and then robotically learn your answers to them. That is how we wouldn't prepare for an interview, especially the big one. So what I'm going to share now is the best ways to prepare. And I'm going to start with what I call knowing your worth and having trust in yourself. And if you've got any comments or questions, then feel free to put them in the chat because now I can see them and I know that this works. So that's really good for me. So I've got a question for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you have 100% confidence in yourself, you trust in your abilities, you feel like it doesn't matter if it's an audience or 3 people in front of you, you feel confident enough to just show your true authentic self, go for it and show them what you're all about. That's number 10 in terms of the confidence style. And 1 being the thought of having to talk about myself in front of anybody and sell myself and sing my praises actually gives me like slight heart palpitations, and it just gives me a load of dread. Where would you be on that scale when it comes to your confidence to talk about yourself and present yourself and put your best kind of foot forward? That's a bit of food for thought. That would be really helpful if I know kind of where you're at on that scale. But preparing for an interview is like what I consider to be a bit of an endurance test. It's a bit of a test of strength, inner strength and character. It is a daunting experience if you look at it in that way, in that you're going to have to be open about who you are, what you represent, what you've achieved, what you're good at, what you're known for, your reputation. And we don't do that very often. So one of my bugbears is when it's just expected that everybody would just feel really comfortable doing this and they'll be really great at it. When do we ever have to sit in front of strangers and just sell ourselves? I would say, so John, 6 to 7, I have a lot of issues. Okay, imposter syndrome. It's a thing. We all have it. 10 out of 10 on a good day. The other John, a 6 to 7 on a bad one. Okay, so this is really good. And what it's saying is, to me, a 6 to 7 tells me that you're very self-aware. And that's a great thing to have, especially when preparing for the big interview. Self-awareness is the thing. An interview is a test of self-awareness. Every question that's kind of like, tell me about yourself. Why have you applied for this role? What do you feel that you can bring? Tell me about a time when you've done X, Y, and Z. What did you do and what was the impact? That is all about self-awareness. They're basically saying, how aware of you about how well you do something and the impact that you have and the approach that you take. So 6 to 7 or above is a fantastic part to be in on that scale. And for anybody who is feeling like they're a bit lower, what I would say is one of the biggest things to do to prepare for the big interview is to work on that confidence muscle, because you could prepare for every question under the sun. You could look at that employer website all day. You could literally learn the whole thing, but it will be delivered through your confidence, through your energy, through your self-belief, and through your self-awareness. So if there's one thing to do to prepare, it would be to build that inner confidence muscle along with your self-awareness. And to do that, a tip that I would share is to have an anchor, or to create what I call an anchor. And that anchor is where you can ground yourself and quite quickly snap into the most positive, fearless, and free version of yourself, free from that imposter syndrome. And the bit where that lies is within. And you enter that part by reminding yourself at what you're amazing at and giving yourself permission to believe it in that moment. So if I was to say to you, think of somebody who you really, really respect. Johns, if you're still there, somebody who you really, really respect, that you know. When you think about that person that you respect, why do you respect them? What is it about them that you really align to or aspire to, or you just really appreciate? And when you've got that person in your mind, think about how they would describe you in 3 words. Somebody who you really, really respect, how would they describe you in 3 words? If you was to write down those 3 words and look at them, and you was to break them down a little bit more and think, why would they say that about me? In that answer lies your positive traits, your energy, probably your reputation. And when you're preparing for an interview, you want to be able to get yourself into the bits where you're appreciating yourself, the things that only you do, how you kind of impact and touch others. And there's other ways of entering a positive frame of mind, but if you're lacking in confidence or low on confidence, think about how long it takes for you to get into that positive frame of mind. Now, because I practice confidence on a daily basis, I can enter a confident frame of mind pretty quickly. I can get into it probably in about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, because I've learned of what to do. John, passionate, articulate, committed. Good day. That's amazing. And yeah, if you was to sit with those three things, passionate, articulate, and committed, where does that come from? Where's that passion? What are you known for being passionate about? Or when you think about that passion, where does it stem from? Articulate, oh my word, I love that. Articulate to me means that your brain is like switched on. You can see things quickly, you can connect dots, you can use, that all parts of the brain. I think that's one of the most amazing traits to have, actually, being articulate and committed. So we all need an anchor. And it's a mixture of just giving yourself permission to believe in the best parts of you, the not even the best parts of you, the individual unique parts of you, the things that other people see straight away, the things that people feel, and the things that light you up. So as I was saying, I can enter a really positive, confident frame of mind pretty quickly, but people that may be low on confidence might need that lead-in time. It's like a muscle, isn't it? It needs to be worked on. So if you've got a big interview and your interview is in 2 weeks' time, you've got 2 weeks to build your confidence as strongly as possible. And that means different things for different people, but don't leave this bit out. Don't just focus on like the standard tips of do your research and rehearse your questions. Won't work without confidence. So is it music? Does music put you in a positive frame of mind? Do you need to create like the big interview playlist that you're going to listen to when you wake up in the morning, or it's 3 o'clock and your motivation's dipping and you need to put it on then? Do you need to only surround yourself with positive people for the lead up between that big interview? So anybody who drains you or is going to distract you from being in this positive frame of mind, I'll see you in a couple of weeks, mate. It's kind of taking the reins, the lead on what you need to do to protect your confidence, because an interview is a test of confidence. It's a test of stamina. And there is a bit of leeway in that it is an interview. So some interviewers will be okay with seeing a few nerves, or seeing that you might not be they don't know your usual self. They can only go on what they feel and what they see and what they hear. So if you present at that interview nervous, your posture's all kind of small, you're underplaying, you're choosing words that aren't bringing you to life, you're choosing words, you know, I'm good at this instead of I'm exceptional at this. This is what I'm known for. You know, confidence comes through the words that you use, comes through your energy, comes through your body language. So what I'm saying is the best ways to prepare for the big interview is to understand where you are on that scale of confidence, and then reverse engineer it in terms of how much time you feel you need to enter that confident frame of mind. And if you can practice it on the daily, the better leading up to the interview. Then it's about, I've mentioned self-awareness, but knowing what you're good at, knowing why you're good at it is going to help prepare, because as I say, an interview is a test of your self-awareness. Now, it's really hard to be self-aware on your own. This is why it's helpful to have a coach or a colleague or a friend supporting you in the preparation, because they can be like that mirror. Sometimes it's helpful to have that mirror so that people can say, no, you're not just good at that, you're great at that. Don't you remember when you did that? And it's like, oh yeah, because when you're left to your own devices, it's very easy to kind of play a little bit smaller than you would be if you had a cheerleader by your side. Okay, so that's a little bit about knowing your worth. I'm going to say something very quickly about attitude, because it's really important when preparing for the big interview. I've used the word big interview for a reason, and that's to emphasize that there are situations where it feels bigger than it really is. So a big interview, as opposed to a little interview, is the one where you really want it. Like, you almost don't want it too much, because if you don't get it, it's going to hit you hard, or you think it's going to hit you hard. You know, it's one of those where you might feel rejection if you wasn't accepted or given the job offer. And we make it big in our mind. But actually, to prepare for any interview or any opportunity that represents change, that represents positivity, that represents your future that you've been, you know, manifesting and wanting for a really long time, it's really easy to put extra pressure on yourself. So a way to prepare, no problem, John. I think you can get this on the replay anyway, so it's fine. A great way of preparing is to think about your attitude. Now, the attitude that I coach my clients to have, I'm going to describe the endpoint, and then everything that I've said before about self-awareness and confident frame of mind is kind of the way to get to that endpoint. The endpoint that we're looking for is, you have this interview, but you get to the point where on the day, you're not even sweating it anymore. It's like you've done your bit. You can say, hand on heart, I have prepared for this interview as best I can. I'm proud and happy with what I've done so far. This opportunity isn't going to define me. If I wasn't to get this opportunity, or receive this job offer, or receive the yes, then I'll be okay. Like, I'll be a bit sad for a bit, but then I'll snap out a bit, I'll be fine, I'll be ready to go again, because there's endless opportunities. And whether that interviewer agrees or doesn't agree, I know my worth. I know that I've got the skills and the experience, and I know that I'd be great at this position or in this role or doing the thing that I'm pitching for or interviewing for. And I trust that I'm in the right place at the right time, and so it is, kind of thing. So that attitude, has confidence built in, it's got resilience built in, and it's got inner trust built in. And they're the things that you need, because interviewing is grueling. It's grueling. You have to go in front of people who you don't know, sell yourself. They don't even know you, you know, they don't really know you yet. And it takes a lot. I mean, all the things that I'm talking about here in terms of preparing takes time out of your day, time out of doing what you want to be doing. So, you know, the interviewers should be lucky that A, you applied, B, that you've shown up, and 3, that you've put in this work. And that's to do with the attitude. So what we don't want is it to be like, oh my gosh, it's the big interview. Oh, I feel so scared. Oh my gosh, it's all going to go wrong. Oh, you know, frightened, nervous. Oh, I'm there's no point doing it. Actually, I'm not even going to do it. It's too scary. You know, we don't want that. We want positive attitude. We want resilience. We want confidence. So in terms of preparing for the big interview, let's think about, let's build in the confidence, let's build in the self-awareness, but let's also build in the attitude. How can we get into that kind of attitude, into that frame of mind? I have screensavers, I have mantras, I have Pinterest boards that are all positive. I can look at things and be able to kind of get that reminder that I've got everything within me to do whatever I want. And I purposely engineer my, you know, my screensavers, my everything, my passwords around that to remind myself to be in this positive frame of mind, so that when an opportunity comes up, because what if the interview is literally in 2 days' time, and you know, you had a conversation with the recruiter, and what do you know, here's the big interview. Some things happen quickly, so the more prepared you are, the better. So we've talked about knowing your worth, we've talked about self-awareness and confidence. Now I'm going to move on to a few nuts and bolts of how to really prepare strategically. And the way that I'm going to attempt to explain this is a bit like a chessboard to anybody who plays chess. Your interviewers are like, you would think your interviewers are like the kings and the queens, like the big pieces. But actually, you have got more power than you think. And what is a really strong way of preparing is to get into the mindset of your decision makers. And anyone who is applying for kind of professional positions, senior positions, leadership positions, use your strategic brain for preparing for an interview, because you do this on the daily anyway. It's just that a lot of people don't apply it to the process of interviewing and applying. So this, what I'm going to explain now, you would actually be doing at the application stage, because that would really set you up nicely for the interview. But if you're doing it for the interview, that's fine. So first things first, you'll hear me talk a lot about reading between the lines. That's how I kind of phrase doing this. This is so important, and it's wearing this detective read between the lines hat that you apply it when you're looking at the company website or you're doing your research on the employer. You're not just reading what they've got. You want to be in this kind of reading between the lines, detective mindset. And what I mean by that is we need to decipher nice and early what the motivations, what are the things that they're not saying. And I know that we can't know that 100%, because at this point you would have seen the job application, you would have seen the person specification, you would have got a little bit of a heads up about what to expect at interview, and that's all you really get. So a lot of it is reading between the lines and trying to understand what's going on. But by knowing or at least having more of an understanding of what might be happening behind the scenes, what their motivations are, what's driving this role, their strategies, their agendas. Not only are you preparing well for the interview, you're actually preparing for the interview questions that you're going to get, because every interview question is loaded. It's always loaded. It's never what it seems. So when they ask a question like, tell me about a time when you have dealt with a difficult situation. How did you handle it and what was the outcome? Or tell me about a time when you have dealt with a difficult stakeholder. They're not just asking you that question because they want to know, have you dealt with a difficult stakeholder? They're asking it to you because they've got loads of difficult stakeholders that are not playing ball, that they need on side, and they're looking to you to be the person to do it and do it really well. And within that, uphold their company reputation, drive forward their agenda, also keep on side the people that have been there for 20 years, as well as the new starters, and deal with all the shifts in company culture and whatever else is going on behind the scenes. Within that one question, that's what they're loading on. But how would you know that if you hadn't done this bit where you're reading between the lines? And in a way, what I notice is that's where a lot of people fall down in terms of really positioning themselves powerfully when they interview. They don't, they prepare for the question in terms of answering the question. And they do that. They'll answer the question. They'll say, oh, there was a time when I dealt with this difficult stakeholder. They were being a bit difficult. I did this and this was the outcome. Yes, tick, you've answered the question, but you've not powerfully answered the question and you haven't strategically answered the question. Because if you know that they've got multiple difficult stakeholders and the reason why it's difficult is because they are not signed up to the new strategy, or they are old school and the company has turned new school and is more innovative and is putting forward new stuff. You then know to choose one of those examples, or to be able to say, this is my example, but I've also got experience of dealing with stakeholders that aren't used to new technology or new processes. So I can apply this approach to this situation as well. When you've read between the lines, you're in a much more better position to show them how you can solve their specific problems. So if there's another thing to do powerfully to prepare for the big interview, it would be to understand as much as possible what's going on behind the scenes. So how do we do that? First things first, you can go to the company website, but only wearing this hat, wearing that detective hat. So when you're looking at their strategies, you're looking at them not to see what they are, you're looking at them to see what they're doing, where they're going and what's happened before. Have they changed? Have they been refreshed? Did they do any consultations? Did they do any co-production? Did they do any announcements? Was there any kind of feedback? Were there any pushbacks? Did they do any annual general meetings or anything that you can watch that gives you a heads up about the politics? The politics are really important. So yeah, when you go into a company website, you're really researching what's not being said as much as possible. If you've got any contacts within the organization that you can reach out to, that's what you're asking. You're asking what's not being said here, what's going on? What am I really going to be asked to do when I get into this role? You can go on places like Glassdoor, where you'll get that feedback from previous or existing staff, which will tell you if they've had any employee surveys or anything like that. You want to know this stuff. You want to know about their turnover. You want to know about their financial situation, particularly if your role is to drive sales or to increase revenue or anything like that. But to take it one step further, think about those intelligent questions at the end of an interview. That bit where they go, do you have any questions? That's your opportunity to show that you haven't just learned about the company. It's your opportunity to show them that from the knowledge that you've got, from the information that you've seen, what does it mean that you will be able to do given the opportunity? And what do you need to know in order to know that this is the right role for you? So when you're approaching researching the employer, researching in the company, this is a two-way process. It's not just about them. It's not just about what you can do for them. It's like, what aren't you saying here? What do I need to know? What is your employee benefit? What is it like to work, to be a leader or a manager here? What can I expect to receive in terms of development? These are really important. So look at their careers pages, look at their HR section, ask the questions that you need to ask in order to make the decision, because it may look like the big interview, but it's as big as you want it to be. This role can be as aligned as you want it. And there's a lot of things that they don't say in a job description and a person specification that I wish that they would, because then we'd all be in a better prepared position when it comes to interview. So another thing to think about, wearing this like detective hat and thinking like them, thinking of the chessboard, thinking strategically, wanting to be like 2-3 steps ahead, is what are their motivations? In my experience, particularly for the clients that I work with that are applying for senior positions, it's very rare that it's just one interview. Usually the process is you have like a recruiter interview, a screening type interview, which sometimes can be over the phone, or it can be like a booked face-to-face or an online interview. Pass the recruiter screening test, then you're on to a next interview, which you might have your potential boss, the potential head of department or senior, and probably one other. Sometimes it doesn't end there. There's another interview with somebody else within the senior leadership team or whatever team who also wants to be involved in the interview. And then you might have HR. For some organizations like local authority, like NHS, or sometimes the charity sector, it's those panel interviews for police, fire, local authority, public sector. They're the types of interviews where you have your panel. You'll have somebody, a representative from HR, you'll have the potential manager, and then you'll probably have one other. If it's a community charity type interview, sometimes they'll have a person of experience or a community member, a patient, they like to do co-production as part of their interview panel. So think about it. You could be going into an interview with 2, 3+ people, all making decisions about what you say and kind of what you present. Now, each one of those people are going to have slightly different motivations. They're going to have slightly different drivers. So a really good way, a powerful way, strategic way of preparing for that interview is a bit like what you probably do at work when you're preparing to lead a project or something. You understand who your enablers are, you understand you understand their motivations, basically. Just apply the same process to interviews, please. Because a lot of people just don't do this. They just wing it and they go, they do a little bit of prep, and then they have this big opportunity and they could have done a little bit more. So say if you've got HR, their purpose is to ensure the interview process goes fairly. This is what should happen. They're there to ensure that it was carried out according to procedure, so that if the interview is going to be scored, that everybody's got consistent you know, the paperwork to record your answers, that there is a process. You know, this person's going to ask you this question, that other person's going to go next. You're all you know, if there's a presentation or whatever, that's all been organized, and they're ensuring that the employment law aspects and the competency based part of the puzzle is being carried out in accordance, which means then that their motivations are going to be more about, are you answering the questions fully? So that if there is anybody who says, well, why didn't I get the role when I've got the experience, they can say, we were scoring it, and on this particular question we gave you a score of this, so you might not have scored as highly as somebody else. So they've got a different kind of agenda, and it's important to know this, because what it means is you will prepare based on what you need to do to cover your bases. So if it's a panel interview, it's a competency based interview, for example, you want to make sure that you know how to answer these types of questions fully in a way that's going to make sure that you score highly. That's how you prepare for that kind of interview. Your potential manager, if they're on the score, you know, if they're in that interview, think about their motivations on the backdrop of that person specification or that job description. So not only are they thinking to themselves, I need this person to be able to do this job really well, they're thinking to themselves, I need to be able to rely and trust on this person. This person needs to be easy to manage. This person needs to not be like the last person that I managed, who I had to performance manage. This person needs to really want this position. They may be thinking, this person, I don't really want them to be like 10 times better than me, because what does that mean about my position? Now, I'm not asking you to ever minimize or play to or hide or not be authentic. But what I am encouraging you to do is to be aware of the subtle kind of motivations that are behind the way that interviewers make their decisions, because unfortunately it's not always a bit about have you got the skills and the experience. A lot of those decisions rely on likability. Do they feel like you're passionate? Do they feel like you're going to fit in? And when I say fit in, I don't mean you know, do you look the part, even though that can play a part, which I'll come to at the end. But it's more about, can they imagine you in their staff team? Can they imagine you getting on with that really difficult person that just pulls everybody back? Will you be able to be that person to kind of change that, or to deal with the company politics? Have you got the character and the stamina? Because they might not say, oh, it's a very challenging environment. We've had really high turnover of staff. Most people can't hack it after 6 months. They're not ever going to say that. That's the bit where the research behind the scenes is like, why have they got such a high staff turnover? What are they going to be looking for in me doing this role? What am I actually going to be walking into? What are the politics? What are the dynamics? And how can I demonstrate, if you still want the job after all of this, how can I demonstrate that I'm the person that can put that positive spin on this role, and I can, you know, give them not only what they need, but I can drive forward my agenda too, because we've all got an agenda. You're not going to go into your next position without making positive impact. I'm yet to meet somebody, particularly who I work with, who doesn't want to go into the next role and do it really well. They don't want to be held back. They don't want to have to minimize or underplay what they're capable of. They want an opportunity in an environment where they can thrive. So it's about demonstrating that and preparing to explain not only that you want that, but how you can achieve that even in a complex environment. And remember, if they've said something like, we need you to be able to navigate complex environments, that's code speak for our place is well difficult to navigate. Most people have struggled to do it. We really need somebody who can do it. Is that you? Yeah. So by wearing this kind of detective hat and reading between the lines, when you're researching and preparing for this interview, what it's doing is it's helping you have a bit of a game plan. And the reason why this works is because, as I say, it's not always just one interview you're going to get. You might have hoops to jump through. You might have a presentation that you need to deliver. You might have to do the first stage interview and then a second stage interview with another person added to the panel. Or you might have to do a test, or they may do a scenario-based interview. They might change up their questions. So the more you prepare, the better, but not in the traditional way, in this kind of way. Okay, so bit of a recap, because I'm aware that I've spoken now for 47 minutes. I hope you're still with me. If you're still watching, you can always fast forward this if you're on the replay. So we started with the worst ways to prepare, which was just having a quick search on the company website, scripting out all potential answers and robotically preparing, learning your answers to them, and then hoping that that's going to be enough. That's not the strongest way of preparing for an interview. It's better than nothing, though. Better than completely winging it and doing nothing. Then we've talked about the best ways to prepare. So we've talked about really building that confidence muscle, having that positive attitude where it's like, this role doesn't define me. I'll do my best and I'll be proud at what I've done. And if they don't like it, then they don't like it, but I'll just move on to the next, because opportunities are endless for me. I like the idea of wearing a detective hat. John's back. Whoop, whoop. Yes, it works every time, John. And we've talked about having great self-awareness, because interviews are the test of self-awareness. We've also talked about how to think like an employer and have that detective's hat on, and to read between the lines of the politics and the stuff that they're not saying. Thinking about the motivations of the people that might be on that interview panel, and just almost kind of anticipating the types of things that they'll appreciate more so than others. So if you kind of know the structure of your interview, it will really help. So for example, I was working with somebody who was within the police force, and it was a semi-entry level role, and their process of interviewing was very much a hypothetical questioning type of approach. So it was still competency based, but it was hypothetical questions. So if you was imagine you your colleague had, you'd noticed that your colleague had stolen some food, or another colleague's food out of the fridge, how would you deal with that situation and what would be your approach? You know, it was those kind of questions. That gives a massive heads up about what their motivations are and what they're actually looking for in an interview like that. They're looking at values, they're looking at behaviors, character, personality. That's how they're testing that. For those ones that were in the local authority, very kind of panel interview, member of HR is there, they're scoring your answers. Those kinds of interviews have a different structure, and the people that are sat on that panel will also have their own little motivations. Your HR representative is thinking, is this person answering the questions fully? Is this interview being conducted fairly? Is this person got the competencies? They're competency driven. Your line manager might be thinking, yeah, I need them to be competent, but actually I need to get on with them. I need to like them. I need to be able to manage them. So it's about thinking about their motivations. And there's only so much you can do here with the information that you've got. But if you was going to search on the company website, you're going on the research kind of experience of trying to find out this kind of information. And anticipating the different scenarios. So if you kind of got a heads up of what type of interview structure it is, this is going to help you. So finally, I'm going to just talk very quickly about how to prepare in practice. So when thinking about all of this stuff, here are the tools that are going to help you do this. So LinkedIn. So we're on LinkedIn. I'm also on YouTube and Facebook, but I'm on LinkedIn right now. And LinkedIn is the professional tool. And say if you've got an interview, and I'm only going to suggest this to anybody who's got a strong LinkedIn profile. If you don't have a strong LinkedIn profile, you don't use LinkedIn very often, I actually probably wouldn't do these tips. But if you do have a strong profile, this is going to work pretty well in terms of preparing and researching and getting into the mindset of your employer. So first things first, you would want to go to LinkedIn, you put in the employer or the company that you're interviewing for, bring it up, within the search bar, click on people, and you want to be looking at all the people that work in that organization. If you know who's on your interview panel, have a look at their profiles, understand what they post on, understand what their interests are, do your own little bit of research. But remember, if they've got the type of LinkedIn where they can see that you've searched on them, then having a profile that reinforces your expertise and reinforces why you're going to be so great in this role, when they meet you, is going to put you front of mind. So if you're thinking, you know, they will have the title, they'll have the title of potentially your manager or head of department or CEO or whoever it is. You could be connecting, you could be following, you could be researching them ahead of your interview, but only do so if you feel like when they see your profile, they're going to think, oh, I'm really intrigued to meet this person. I'm actually quite excited to find out more because, you know, you've said something or you've got your profile laid out in a way that really shows that you're really passionate about what you do best. And, you know, first impressions mean a lot. And if it means that you get that heads up before they meet you in person or, you know, online in the interview, then all the better. You can also use LinkedIn to follow the company. So get that up-to-date information about what they're posting on, what's coming up. So if you've seen a role and the interview's in like a couple of weeks, that's a long time, that's a good a chunk of time to be just immersing yourself in the world of, you know, the company, the employer that you're going for. I've mentioned Glassdoor, but Glassdoor is a good one to be able to just see what other staff have said, have rated the company. It helps give a heads up of the types of things, politics or things to be aware of before your interview. And obviously the company website. Do go on the company website, do your research, but do it so we're in that detective's hat. Just going very back a little bit, this event was to help prepare for the big interview. But if you was to do these things at the application stage, so not at the interview stage, the application stage, when you was about to amend that CV, upload and apply for this role, what you would have had is a really unique kind of opportunity. And again, this comes with a caveat. It's only for the people that feel comfortable talking about themselves, maybe over the phone, and have the LinkedIn profile ready to go at that application stage, and probably your CV documents as well. They're strong and reinforce you. But when the role was being advertised, it could have been that they had said that if you wanted to ask any questions or contact the employer for more details, they may have given their contact details. Some roles do that. That's such a great opportunity to do this, to do what's going on behind the scenes and do your research, because you could have then rang up and said something along the lines of, or connected and asked for an opportunity to speak to the manager or whoever's kind of posted or advertised the position. You could have spoke to somebody and said, I've seen this role advertised. I see that you're advertising for I don't know, program manager or whatever. I'm really interested in it, but I've just got a few questions that I would really appreciate you answering, and use it as an opportunity to build that relationship with the potential decision makers. After the interview, you've kind of like you've slightly missed that opportunity, which is why if you do it at the application stage, you've got that reason to contact them. You've got some intelligent questions to ask, and you really need to speak to the right person to do that. So when you're having that conversation, that's the perfect time to say, I've noticed that you, on your website, it mentioned that you've just launched a new strategy to deliver this. That sounds really exciting. How far along are you in that, and would this role relate to that? Or, you know, it's about trying to get as much information and a heads up about the interview as best you can, so that when you go into that interview, all your examples are strategically kind of aligned to what you know they're looking for. So, how to powerfully prepare for the big interview? Confidence, attitude, self-awareness means knowing your worth. Reading between the lines, understanding your decision makers' motivations is all about thinking like an employer and wearing a detective's hat. And then practically how to prepare, having a really strong LinkedIn profile, making sure it reinforces you, using LinkedIn to research, follow, and connect with the potential interviewers, and following in the company, using sites like Glassdoor to just try and get a sense of what might be going on behind the scenes. And to put it all together, if you was to, going back to that original question about where you are in that kind of scale of confidence, when you do all of this, you've done all your research, you know what you're good at, your interview then is just about delivering what you know you can do with the confidence that it deserves. So depending on how far away the interview is, set yourself almost like a timetable that helps you to enter this positive frame of mind and So it doesn't feel rushed, and it just feels like, yeah, I know I've done my bit. I've covered my end. I know what to expect as much as I can, so that when you get on the day of the interview, it's just about delivery of being yourself, being your true, authentic self. So I hope you found that useful. I've got a dedicated resources page on my website, judybullymore.com. It has everything to do with preparing for an interview. So be sure to check it out. And I'm here if you feel as though you want to prepare for that big interview and you want somebody who has got success in doing this with their clients to the point where they have multiple job offers for their dream positions, which is exactly what I do. On my website, there is a testimonial section with actual video interviews of the clients that I've worked with. I feel like they do me justice more than I do. So definitely watch what they've got to say about the approach that I take, because it's not a standard approach. I'm very much about connecting, your heart and your true ambitions and your desires and the things that come naturally, your natural attributes, with the strategic parts, which is like your strong examples of the proof, the evidence that you do this, your perspectives. Your perspectives are everything. Your approach to leadership, your approach to management, your theory when it comes to how you embed, a positive workforce, how you do teamwork well, how you do everything that you need to do your way. So I spend a lot of time with my clients really refining their perspectives, making sure you've got that LinkedIn profile that does you justice, making sure you've got the applications that do you justice, and the technique. So I have created a interview technique. It's called the interview story impression technique, and it is ideal for competency-based interviews. I've got a separate technique called the 4-point success technique for your open questions, anything that's non-competency based. So anything that's kind of like, tell me about a time when you've led a project, how did you approach it, what was the result, any competency-based questions like that. The interview story impression technique is amazing for that, not the STAR technique. Please don't use the STAR technique. If you're using the STAR technique, please message me and I'll share with you my interview story impression technique just so that you can look at it. And as I say, if it's another question like, why have you applied for this role? What do you feel like you can bring? What do you feel are your biggest strengths? Where do you see yourself in 3 years' time? Any of those kinds of questions, I have a separate technique for that. It's really simple. It's just about always covering your four bases, which is skills, experience, passion, and personality. So I go through all of this in more detail. So, oh, Emma, thank you. I need you in my ear. Well, I've just literally discovered StreamYard and LinkedIn Lives. So now I can do this more often. I'm so happy. I could literally talk about interviews, applications, CVs, careers all day, but I'm 3 minutes past my event, so I better go because I've been on for an hour. But it's lovely. Thank you so much for being involved. Emma, Johns, and anybody else that's watching. If you've got any questions, just message me, DM me. And as I say, on my website, I've got a dedicated resource section that has loads of masterclasses and various other things that you can access and watch. So yeah, thank you for going easy on me on my first live, and have a lovely day. I don't know whether it's shining where you are, but it's lovely. I'm going to go out in my garden now and have a cup of, it's too hot for coffee, isn't it? But I just fancy one. I'm going to have a coffee and a cold drink. So enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you so much. And follow me if you're not already or are connected. Let's connect. All right.